Narcissists are notorious for avoiding or derailing the conversations that we try to have with them. But anyone that's been in any kind of relationship with a narcissist has probably experienced what I'm going to talk about today, and that is when the narcissist suddenly wants to talk. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I'm providing links below for you. Now, a couple of things I'm not talking about in today's video. First of all, a lot of narcissists are very talkative, and they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, usually about themselves or things they care about or things that they think make them seem interesting. That's not really what I'm talking about in today's video. And I'm also not really talking about your general everyday average situation where somebody in a relationship with you says, we need to talk, because that's usually a little nerve-wracking. Nobody likes to hear that, right? But when it comes from a narcissist, in my opinion, this is a whole different level of anxiety that this can induce. This is a different situation, and I'm going to try to define what the difference is in today's video, but I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way. I mean, sometimes conversations are uncomfortable, and that doesn't mean that they're unhealthy or unnecessary to the health of the relationship. But let's get into what happens when a narcissist suddenly wants to talk to you. Depending on your relationship with this person, this could potentially strike terror into your heart. And I'm sure many of you listening know exactly what I'm talking about. There's really no rational way to explain this, but I liken it to the feeling that you might get if you were driving 70 or 80 miles an hour on the freeway and you suddenly realized that you had no brakes. Nothing bad is happening yet. You know, you're not about to crash into anybody. You're still driving along safely, right? But you realize you have no brakes, and that dread, that terror, just your stomach just sinks, and you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how you're going to get out of this situation or how it's going to end. That's how it can feel sometimes, especially when you're in a very abusive relationship with somebody that has a lot of emotional control over you, when they suddenly want to talk to you about something. Just really indescribable and irrational sometimes terror. Now, if they don't have quite this amount of emotional control over you, you might just experience something that feels like annoyance or maybe a little bit of dread, like, what do they want to talk about now? I'm gonna get stuck here for 2 or 3 hours. What is this about? So you might feel something like that. Or you might feel hope, like, oh, they're finally willing to talk to me. Oh, maybe we can work things out. Oh, thank goodness. We can finally have a conversation. One more thing you might feel is obligation to have a conversation you don't really want to have, and guilt maybe for feeling that way. So you might have these feelings of, oh, I don't really want to have this conversation, or, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? I'm scared of talking to this person. But then you feel bad that you feel that way. Like, well, how do I expect to solve our problems? Or how do I expect to help this relationship grow in a healthy way if I don't want to talk to this person? And you might even beat yourself up for not wanting to talk to them before you're able to really acknowledge and see the very valid reasons you have for not wanting to talk to this person. So if this describes how you feel, feeling like you don't want to have this conversation, and maybe you feel guilty about that, or it's making you feel hope, like, oh, this person's finally going to communicate with me. And this isn't a hope like, oh good, it's time we had this conversation. Yes, let's have this talk, and this will be good for us. It's more like this desperate kind of hope. Like deep down, you know that things probably can't be solved, but it's like pushing the button on a slot machine for the 3,000th time. Just this desperate, toxic kind of hope of, oh, they want to talk. Maybe I can get through to them. Maybe this is my chance to finally communicate. So it's not like this healthy kind of hope. And I think if you think about it, you can tell the difference. You know, when you're about to have a conversation with somebody that actually listens to you and cares about what you have to say, and you know that this conversation might be difficult, but it's more than hope. It's really knowing that this conversation is probably going to be productive, as difficult as it might be to have it. So let me talk about the reasons that narcissists actually do want to sit down and talk to you and have a conversation. And these reasons should validate the reason that you have these feelings that you don't want to have this conversation, or this toxic, desperate kind of hope that maybe this conversation will go somewhere productive. Because I want to be able to validate those feelings for you, because as I said, they can make you feel guilty or like something's wrong with you. Like, why don't you want to have a conversation with this person? That's not very caring of you, or that doesn't sound like somebody that wants to have a healthy relationship. You're not even willing to talk about your problems with this person. So let me validate why you feel that way. The first possible reason a narcissist might want to talk to you is to put you in your place. They might say something like, when you said that thing at that party the other night, it really offended me. You were very disrespectful. And these types of conversations to put you in your place are usually after whatever happened is gone and the people that were involved aren't present anymore. The narcissist gets you cornered alone somewhere, and now they can talk to you about how inappropriate your actions were, or how you shouldn't have said that thing you said. And they will often have these conversations with you after the fact, after everyone's gone, because of that, so that they can really control the conversation and gaslight you and not have anyone around that's going to actually introduce some reasonable reality to the conversation, especially somebody that was there when they saw whatever it is the narcissist is calling you out on now. The narcissist wants to put you in your place. You're not allowed to talk down to them or to say anything that they might misconstrue as making fun of them or disrespecting them. This kind of conversation often results when we assert our boundaries to the narcissist, or when we bring up something true that happened. Maybe the narcissist is talking to somebody and they say something about, getting their master's degree at such and such school. And you just honestly, in confusion, say, I didn't think you finished that. I thought you dropped out, or something like that. I mean, yeah, maybe you shouldn't say that in front of somebody when they're lying about their educational background. I think that's a really good example of a situation that can cause this kind of conversation, is when they're just outright lying to people or misrepresenting the truth, and you try to correct them, or you're honestly confused and you ask them for clarification, like, oh, I didn't think you got your master's degree. You got your master's degree? Something like that. They're going to call you out later and try to tell you how disrespectful you were, or how much you hurt their feelings, or anything to put you in your place and let you know that you better just keep your mouth shut if you're about to say anything that might make them look bad or make them feel bad. Another reason that a narcissist might want to have a conversation with you is to confuse you, to gaslight you, to control the narrative, or to rewrite history. And this, again, is a conversation that they probably want to have alone with you, or with only people that are on their side present. They might say things to you like, I'm really worried about your anger problem. You seem to be really angry a lot of the time. I don't understand why, when they're the one making you angry all the time, right? They're doing things that upset you. But of course, this is your problem now. You have an anger problem. They might say something like, I'm really worried about your memory problems. You seem to have a really hard time remembering things, and I'm worried about you, when they're actually gaslighting you, confusing you, making things up. They're turning this around on you to rewrite the narrative, to make this your problem that needs to be solved, instead of allowing you to see the true problem, which is they're manipulating you or abusing you. Maybe they'll say something to you like, "You seem so unhappy with me. I don't know what to do. Nothing I do seems to be good enough for you." And you don't really know how to express to them that their behavior is what's making you so unhappy, because they're turning the narrative around on you. You're the one who's so ungrateful, so unhappy after everything they've done for you. What's wrong with you? If they're really sophisticated, they might kick it up a notch and say something like, "You were not honest with me when you told me that I made you happy, because obviously you're not happy with me. So I can't be with somebody who could be so dishonest." These conversations are just designed to get you off the trail. If you're starting to see and understand that this person is manipulating you, using you, abusing you, they want to flip that around. They want to fix that and get you focused on something else. Probably something that's wrong with you, all the things you need to fix. And that's the purpose here, is just to gaslight you, to rewrite history, to show you, to prove to you that you are the problem here, not them. Another reason that a narcissist will want to sit down and have a conversation with you is to ruin your plans for the day, to mess things up. Maybe you wanted to go shopping for a specific project you're working on. I don't know. You had some agenda that you wanted to attend to in the afternoon, and that was when they decided to sit down and have a serious conversation with you about some awful thing you did 3 weeks ago, right? And next thing you know, you're stuck in this 2 or 3 hour conversation that goes nowhere, but by the time it's over, all your plans are ruined. I think narcissists do this maybe consciously or subconsciously. Like maybe it's just a habit and they're not even really fully thinking about the way that they're screwing your day up, just to exert control over you. Narcissists will do things just for the sake of controlling you, of proving to themselves how relevant and powerful and important they are. So if you were trying to go to the gym, or you needed to bake a cake for your friend's birthday or whatever, or you were about to go to therapy or to some important meeting or something, they're gonna do what they can to mess your day up, to mess up your plans, to redirect your attention back to them and help them prove this point to themselves that they run the show. You can't just make your own plans, make your own agenda, have your own schedule under your control. If they want to screw your schedule up, if they want to change your plans, they can anytime they want. And they'll do this just to prove that to themselves. And another reason that narcissists will want to have a conversation with you, as I alluded to earlier, is to give you false hope. I think that when they do this, this is kind of a Hail Mary for them. This often happens at the end of a relationship when you're trying to leave, or maybe you have left, you've cut things off, and they've just run out of tricks. And they have got to somehow give you false hope. They've got to finally have that conversation with you that you have been desperately trying to have with them, maybe for years. They've got to finally show you that they are willing to listen, that they do understand your feelings, that they are willing to change, that they can finally see how much they stand to lose. And this gives you that desperate, toxic kind of false hope where you know deep down that nothing's going to change, but you want so desperately for them to finally listen to you, to finally have a productive conversation, to finally communicate that you're willing to believe it. And narcissists do this as a last-ditch effort to exert control over you and the relationship. This, just like everything else, is really all about control. Now, one thing that can be really difficult about this is telling the difference between a narcissistic, manipulative, coercive, controlling, abusive type of conversation and somebody that just genuinely wants to communicate, wants to solve problems. It can be really difficult to tell the difference between these two types of conversations when you are in the middle of this relationship. And this is like what I referred to earlier. I mean, what kind of person are you if you're not willing to sit down and talk with this person? They want to talk to you. Well, you better talk to them. You're always complaining about how they never listen to you, and now they want to talk. Well, you better talk, right? This can be very complicated and confusing, or it can seem very complicated and confusing because of the way everything can always be turned around on you. You could say that, well, the narcissist is trying to control me, trying to hurt my feelings. But the narcissist is always going to accuse you of all the things that they're actually doing. And very often, the narcissist is convincing themselves that they're right. They're not just trying to convince you that you're being controlling and hurtful. They're trying to convince themselves of that as well. And just about anything that I can bring up, that I can say, here's the difference between these two types of conversations, a narcissist can twist this around in their head to have it apply to their conversation as well. And that might make you wonder if you're doing that, right? This can get really confusing. So here's some questions that you can ask yourself about these types of conversations. First of all, I think, how is this conversation making you feel? Do you feel like this person is listening to you? Or do you feel like you're on trial or like you've done some horrible thing? And if they are making you feel like you've done something horrible, step back and look at whatever that thing is rationally. Try to look at it without the emotion attached to it. Is it truly something terrible? Did you really do something awful? Or did you just try to assert a boundary? Or did you just ask an honest question that you were honestly curious about? I mean, narcissists will ask honest, curious questions, right? But they know they're saying something that's actually going to hurt you or make you look stupid without any other purpose behind it. And honestly, even when they do that, does it really warrant the type of conversation that narcissists will try to have with you? Another question you can ask yourself is, who is controlling this conversation? Who has control over the narrative and what's being said? Whose agenda is being served in this conversation? And what is that agenda? Is the relationship being helped by this conversation? Is the relationship growing stronger? Is there true communication here? Or is one person talking to the other person? And again, to get back to how the conversation's making you feel, do you feel obligated to talk to this person when you really don't want to? In a healthy relationship, you should be aware of and have faith in the fact that this conversation is going to be safe and productive. You're not going to be ripped to shreds. This is going to be a back and forth dialogue where you're talking to each other and trying to work a problem out. You could ask yourself, what problem is being solved by this conversation? And is it really an important problem to solve? Like, if I said no last week when this person asked me if they could borrow my car, does that warrant this 3-hour conversation about how selfish I am? What's the problem being solved here? How selfish I am for not letting them borrow my car? Is that the problem that's being solved? And is that problem being solved by this conversation? If I'm trying to have a conversation with them about how they're disrespectful to me, or they're never happy with anything I do, and they're always criticizing me, they're rude to me, what's the problem I'm trying to solve? I'm trying to maybe solve a communication problem. I may be trying to understand why they're treating me this way, what I can do to help them stop being so mean, or what I'm doing to make them feel like they need to treat me this way. I'm trying to actually solve a real problem here when I'm doing that. But what problem are they trying to solve in this conversation? My audacity at asserting boundaries? Is that the problem? Another thing you can think about is how this conversation started. How did this person initiate the conversation? Exactly what did they say to you? And imagine what would happen if you initiated a conversation with them in exactly the same way. How would that look? Would that result in a 2 or 3 hour conversation that you are controlling? Or would this person actually avoid, derail, and maybe even shame you for daring to bring up something? Would this person actually maybe a week later start a whole new conversation about how wrong you were to try to start that conversation? You can also consider, after this conversation is over, what was the result of this conversation? Do you feel better? Is the relationship stronger? Did anything get solved? Or were you just put in your place? Or are you just more confused now than when the conversation started? Or do you have a whole bunch of false hope now that you think this person's finally going to be willing to change and talk to you and be the person you need them to be? What was the outcome of this conversation? Are you more under this person's control? Did they effectively manipulate you into seeing things their way? Or did this conversation result in you feeling like somebody's finally hearing you and listening to you? We can stay stuck for years in relationships with narcissists, having these types of conversations with them, conversations they initiate over and over again, thinking that it's just what we do when we have relationships with people that we want to maintain. But stepping back and looking at the big picture of what these conversations actually accomplish, how they make us feel, and how they can actually tear down our self-worth and our feelings of autonomy, can help free us from this feeling of obligation we might have, that we need to continue to have these conversations with people that don't respect us, that aren't listening to us, and are really just trying to confuse us and put us in our place. You are never under any obligation to have a conversation you don't want to have with anybody. You get to decide what conversations are going to help you and your relationships with other people, what conversations are going to be productive, what conversations are worth having. You have the right to learn over time that there are some people who are just going to waste your time with endless, pointless conversations that go nowhere but a direction that just makes you feel worse about yourself. You don't have to talk to people that are just trying to control and manipulate you. There is nothing wrong with accepting, acknowledging, and observing that sometimes there's nothing left to talk about. And it doesn't matter if that's the moment when the narcissist finally wants to talk. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.